The Galactic Kingdom was a mighty power in the stars. For centuries it had ruled many worlds, spreading its banners over planets rich with metals, food, and energy. The nobles of the kingdom were proud of their history, believing no world could resist them. They lived in shining palaces, gave orders to great fleets, and thought themselves the masters of all who walked under the suns. In the heart of their empire stood the Grand Hall, a vast chamber carved from crystal and metal. Tall pillars stretched toward the ceiling, glowing with the light of hidden engines. Here the nobles gathered to make decisions for the kingdom. It was not a place of unity, but of rivalry. Each noble house wanted more power than the others. Some wanted new lands, some wanted greater fleets, and some wanted to prove their strength to rivals. On this day the Grand Hall was filled with loud voices. The nobles argued over a single subject. Scouts had found Earth, a blue and green planet filled with life. Reports said the humans were clever but had short lives. Their fleets were small compared to the great navy of the kingdom. To the nobles, this was an opportunity. Earth could be invaded, its resources taken, and its people made to serve the crown. One noble stood and raised his voice. He was Lord Rainer of the Second House. His eyes burned with ambition as he spoke. He said Earth was weak and could not defend itself against the full might of the kingdom. He claimed the humans had little experience in war and no unity to resist. He told the council that the invasion would be quick and bring honor to the kingdom. Another noble, Lady Vanya of the Fifth House, rose in reply. She argued that humans were clever traders and had built machines that were not simple. She warned that underestimating them could bring danger. She reminded the council of past mistakes when proud nobles had rushed into war only to face losses. But her words were drowned by shouts of others who wanted glory. The hall filled with voices calling for war. Some nobles laughed at the idea of humans resisting. Others spoke of the wealth of Earth, its oceans, its lands, and its industries. The promise of such riches blinded them to caution. Soon the grand hall echoed with the cry to vote. The vote was taken with bright stones placed into bowls, one for war and one for peace. Servants carried the bowls to the center. One by one the nobles cast their stones. The bowl of war filled quickly. Only a few stones of peace fell into the other bowl. When the count was complete, the result was clear. The kingdom had chosen to invade Earth. Trumpets sounded in the hall. The nobles cheered and lifted their hands high. Some called it a victory already, though no battle had yet been fought. Lord Rainer smiled proudly and promised to lead the first fleet. He declared that within weeks Earth would kneel before the crown. The council roared with approval, their pride filling the chamber like fire. Yet far away, across the stars, Earth was not silent. Humans had long watched the skies. They had tracked movements of unknown ships and listened to whispers in the dark void. Their scientists had learned that they were not alone. Their leaders had prepared in secret, building weapons and defenses not shown to outsiders. Earth was not as weak as the nobles believed. While the nobles celebrated their decision, human satellites circled their world like patient guardians. Hidden platforms rested in deep orbit, silent but armed. Defense networks lay waiting, their systems linked by quiet codes. Factories had built machines not for trade but for war. The people of Earth were divided in many things, but against an invader they would stand together. The kingdom thought the vote was the end of debate, but in truth it was only the beginning of their downfall. Their decision was made with pride, not wisdom. They did not see that the humans they mocked were watching, preparing, and waiting for the day when the kingdom would strike. That day was now set in motion. The nobles returned to their palaces, writing orders for fleets to gather. Admirals prepared banners and ships. Armies were told to ready themselves for conquest. Across the empire, the cry of war spread like a storm. The kingdom believed it had chosen glory. It had in fact chosen folly. For the humans of Earth were not like the other worlds that had fallen before. They were stubborn, clever, and united by struggle. When the fleets came, the kingdom would learn the truth. And so the decision was sealed. The vote to invade Earth was complete. The nobles of the kingdom celebrated, blind to the danger they had awakened. Far below their shining stars, Earth turned in silence, ready for the storm that was coming. The order to invade Earth spread quickly through the kingdom's fleets. Admirals sharpened their plans, engineers polished their ships, and soldiers gathered in shining armor. At the center of the storm stood Lord Raynor, who had promised to bring Earth to its knees. His fleet was chosen to strike first. The fleet was vast. Hundreds of ships stretched across the stars, each bearing the crest of the kingdom. There were great carriers that could hold squadrons of smaller craft, heavy cruisers with powerful cannons, and transports filled with troops ready for conquest. The nobles aboard these vessels believed victory was already certain. They drank to their success and spoke of the wealth Earth would soon give them. When the fleet broke through the void near the solar system, there was silence at first. The stars shone coldly, and no human ships met them. The nobles laughed at this. Some said the humans were too afraid to even appear. Lord Raynor himself stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing at the blue planet in the distance. He told his officers that this invasion would be remembered as a lesson to all worlds that dared stand apart from the kingdom. Yet as they advanced deeper into human space, small signs began to appear. Strange signals flickered on their scanners. At first, they thought it was nothing but static. Then they noticed objects in orbit, circling Earth like quiet guardians. These were not simple satellites for weather or trade. They were shaped with purpose, armed and shielded. The fleet scouts reported that the objects formed patterns. They were not scattered by chance but arranged with care. Together they created a web that stretched across the skies above Earth. To the nobles, this was unexpected. They had thought Earth defended itself with little more than missiles or primitive craft. Instead, they were staring at a network designed for war. Lord Raynor dismissed their worries. He declared that human weapons could not stand against the technology of the kingdom. He ordered the fleet to move closer and prepare for the first strike. His voice was steady, but a shadow of doubt flickered in the eyes of his officers. As the kingdom ships drew near, the humans awoke their defenses. One by one, platforms powered up. Lights flashed along their frames, and hidden guns slid into place. Earth's silent guardians revealed themselves in full strength. The scanners of the kingdom lit with warnings. The web of defenses came alive, turning cold space into a battlefield waiting to begin. The nobles were surprised, but they did not retreat. They believed pride demanded they attack at once. Raynor gave the order. Waves of kingdom ships advanced, their engines burning bright, their weapons ready. Trumpets of war echoed across the command channels. Then the first shot was fired. It did not come from the kingdom but from Earth. A rail slug, invisible in the dark until it struck, tore through the shields of a cruiser. The ship broke apart, its remains scattering across the void. Before the nobles could react, more shots followed. Earth's weapons struck with speed and precision. The battle of the orbit had begun. The nobles had expected a weak defense that would crumble at the first attack. Instead, they found themselves facing a storm of fire. Human drones poured from hidden bays, moving in swarms that cut across the kingdom's formations. They moved with purpose, striking weak points the nobles had not thought important. Shields failed, engines burned, and proud ships of the kingdom fell one by one. Reiner roared for his fleet to press forward. He shouted that numbers would break the human line. But the humans were not fighting like any foe the kingdom had faced. Their weapons struck quickly, retreated, then struck again. Their drones sacrificed themselves to open paths for heavier fire. Every move was planned, every strike chosen with care. For the first time, the nobles began to fear. They realized the humans had prepared for this moment. The silence that had greeted them on arrival had not been weakness but patience. Earth had been waiting, watching, and planning the trap. As the orbit burned with fire, far below on Earth the people watched the skies. They did not panic. They saw the flashes above and knew their defenses were holding. Factories continued to work, leaders continued to send orders, and soldiers on the ground readied themselves for the next stage. Humanity did not falter. Reiner tried to rally his fleet, but the cost was rising. Every ship lost shook the confidence of his nobles. Some whispered that they should retreat and call for reinforcements. But pride chained them to the battle. They could not imagine fleeing before a people they had called weak. What they did not see was that the battle was not only fought with weapons. Human commanders had studied the kingdom's fleet for years. They knew how their ships moved, how their officers reacted, and where their pride blinded them. The humans were not just firing guns, they were using knowledge as their sharpest blade. By the time the first day of battle ended, the kingdom had lost more ships than it ever expected. The blue planet still turned below, untaken, unbroken, and unafraid. The nobles had come seeking glory, but they had found resistance unlike anything in their long history of conquest. The first fleet had arrived at Earth, and with it the kingdom's dream of easy victory began to die. The kingdom's first fleet had come to Earth with banners raised and victory already written in their minds. They believed the planet would fall in days. But when the first exchange of fire ended, the truth stood clear. Earth was not weak. Earth was ready. Above the blue world, the void turned into fire. Rail slugs cut through space faster than the eye could follow. Missiles launched from hidden platforms, breaking apart to release swarms of smaller warheads. Drones darted in every direction, weaving paths between the kingdom's larger vessels. Each strike was sharp and precise. A noble commander on one of the cruisers shouted that the humans were using primitive weapons. He laughed when he saw the drones strike his shields, but his laughter ended when a second wave came. The drones did not fight like simple machines. They worked together, circling the cruiser, striking the same weak point again and again. At last the shields gave way, and a rail slug from far behind the swarm pierced the cruiser's hull. The ship broke into fire and silence. The kingdom had relied on heavy armor and thick shields for centuries. They believed no small weapon could harm their mighty ships. The humans showed them otherwise. By focusing fire, by sacrificing small drones to open gaps, by striking where it hurt most, they tore holes in the kingdom's fleet. Lord Reiner watched from the flagship with fury in his eyes. He could not understand how Earth fought so well. He ordered the fleet to spread out and push forward, but this only gave the humans more room to strike. Each group of ships that separated became easy prey. The humans did not fight like a rigid army. They fought like a living thing, flexible and quick. From their stations, human commanders smiled grimly. They had studied the kingdom for years. They knew the nobles trusted in pride, in numbers, in armor. The humans had built weapons not to match strength with strength, but to strike at the gaps pride never saw. Every platform in orbit, every drone in the swarm, Every hidden cannon was part of a plan drawn from long study. As the hours passed, the void filled with wrecks. The kingdom's banners floated burned and broken. Still, Reynor pressed his fleet onward. He could not return in shame. His pride demanded victory. He sent wave after wave, trying to overwhelm Earth with sheer numbers. But the humans adapted each time. When the kingdom tried a wide assault, the humans tightened their formations and struck the center. When the kingdom focused all fire on one side, the humans drew them in and trapped them with mines. Each mistake of the nobles became another wound, another lesson in the cost of arrogance. Far below, people across Earth followed the battle. Screens showed glowing arcs of fire across the night skies. Families watched together, not with fear but with determination. They knew their defense was holding. The world that had once fought wars among itself now stood as one. Farmers built supplies, engineers sent fresh drones, students worked in factories, and leaders coordinated the defense with calm voices. Humanity was united. Among the kingdom's ships, doubt spread. Officers whispered to their lords that perhaps they should fall back and call for aid. Some nobles grew pale as they saw human weapons strike with perfect timing. But Reynor silenced them with rage. He shouted that retreat would shame the kingdom forever. He declared that they would either take Earth or die trying. The humans heard none of his speeches. They saw only a fleet trapped in its own pride. They did not celebrate victory yet, for they knew the war was only beginning, but they pressed harder, unwilling to give the nobles even a moment to recover. By the end of the battle's second day, the stars above Earth were littered with wreckage. Dozens of kingdom ships had fallen. The humans lost platforms and drones, but their spirit remained strong. Every platform destroyed was replaced with 2 more built in haste. Every drone lost was another reason to fight harder. The orbit of Earth had become a graveyard for the kingdom's pride. Still, the First Fleet fought on, unwilling to admit defeat. But every hour that passed drained their strength. Supplies ran low. Morale cracked. And the humans only grew sharper. From his flagship, Reynor looked at Earth and saw a world that refused to bow. He clenched his fists and swore the planet would fall, yet deep inside he felt the first sting of fear. For the first time in his life, he faced an enemy who did not play by the rules of the kingdom. An enemy who fought not for glory or empire, but for survival. And survival, Reynor realized, could make a people more dangerous than any noble fleet. The Battle of the Orbit was not finished, but its shape was already clear. The kingdom had come with arrogance, and Earth had answered with fire and resolve. The invasion that was meant to be quick had turned into a test of endurance. The humans had passed the first trial. The kingdom had only begun to understand what kind of enemy they had chosen. The fires of the battle in orbit lit the skies of Earth, and the people of the planet watched them with steady hearts. The kingdom had come expecting fear and surrender, but what they saw instead was unity. Humanity had faced war, hunger, and struggle many times in its own history. Now those lessons became the strength that carried them through the storm. Across cities and towns, screens showed the progress of the fight. Families sat together, whispering prayers for the defenders above. Workers left their normal tasks and entered factories that now produced drones, weapons, and supplies. Roads once filled with trade goods now carried convoys of fuel and equipment. The whole world turned as one machine, built for survival. In a small town, a farmer named Rahul loaded food into trucks. He had never fought in battle, but he understood that soldiers needed strength. His crops were no longer only for markets but for armies in orbit. He looked to the night sky and saw flashes like stars burning, and though fear touched his heart, he kept working. He knew every sack of food mattered. In a factory city, a group of students worked at assembly lines. Their hands were young, but their eyes were steady. They built parts for drones, welding frames and wiring circuits. The machines they produced would rise into the sky to replace those destroyed in battle. They did not think of glory, only of duty. Each drone they finished was another shield for their families. In command centers, human leaders studied maps of space. They spoke calmly, trading information and adjusting tactics. No single ruler gave orders to all, yet their cooperation was strong. Nations that once argued now shared resources without question. For the first time in history, humanity stood not as divided states but as one people. On the front lines in orbit, soldiers and pilots listened to these voices. They knew Earth stood behind them, every worker, every farmer, every child. That knowledge gave them strength greater than armor. They fought with sharp focus, moving drones into formations, repairing damaged platforms, and sending strikes against the kingdom's ships. The kingdom did not understand this kind of resolve. For them, war was a stage for noble pride. For humans, war was survival. That difference showed in every moment of the battle. The kingdom's nobles quarreled over who should lead charges, while humans worked as one, each person willing to sacrifice for the whole. As the days passed, Earth's unity grew deeper. When power grids failed in one city, others sent supplies. When factories in one land were struck by falling wreckage from orbit, workers in distant lands doubled their efforts. Even those who had no weapons found ways to contribute. Musicians played to keep spirits high, teachers gathered children in safe shelters, and doctors cared for the wounded without rest. The humans refused to break. Meanwhile, in the kingdom fleet, cracks began to show. Nobles shouted at one another, blaming others for losses. Some accused rivals of cowardice, others accused them of incompetence. Their pride, once so loud, became poison. They struggled to understand why humans, with shorter lives and less technology, could stand so strong. From the flagship, Lord Rainer raged. He ordered more attacks, demanding that the humans be crushed. But his voice no longer carried the same power. His officers obeyed, yet they did so with doubt in their hearts. They saw what Rainer would not admit, that the humans were not only resisting, they were growing stronger with every hour. Back on Earth, Raoul the farmer saw his fields empty, but he did not despair. His work now fed soldiers who held the line. The students in the factory looked at their tired hands, but they kept building. Commanders in their centers saw maps filled with red marks of enemy ships, but they smiled when blue marks of new human drones appeared beside them. The spirit of Earth was alive. Every loss only made it burn brighter. One evening, as the battle slowed, a commander stood before his crew and spoke. He said they were not fighting only for Earth, but for the right of humanity to stand free among the stars. His words echoed in the hearts of his crew, and when the next wave of enemy ships arrived, they fought with renewed strength. The kingdom's nobles had believed humans would crumble under pressure. Instead, the humans thrived under it. Their unity became a weapon sharper than any cannon. Their resolve became armor stronger than any shield. By the end of the fourth week, the kingdom had lost more ships than in any single campaign of its past. And yet Earth still stood, proud and unbroken. The blue world was no longer just a planet to conquer. It was now a symbol of defiance. The people of Earth had shown the galaxy what they were made of. They were not divided tribes, nor weak children of a small world. They were builders, fighters, dreamers, and survivors. They had stood together against the greatest power they had ever faced, and they had not fallen. The kingdom had chosen to test them. Humanity had answered with resolve that could not be broken. The war that the nobles of the kingdom thought would end in days had now stretched into months. Earth still stood strong, and the First Fleet, once so proud, had been cut down piece by piece. What shocked the nobles most was not just the strength of human weapons but the will of the people. They could not understand how a world without kings, crowns, or noble blood could fight with such unity. Inside the grand hall of the kingdom, far from the battle, the noble houses argued louder than ever. Reports of losses arrived daily. Ships burned, officers fell, and glory turned to shame. Each house blamed another. Some accused rivals of holding back their fleets. Others whispered that certain admirals had failed on purpose to weaken their enemies within the council. The kingdom was beginning to fracture. Lady Vanya of the Fifth House, who had warned against the invasion, stood again before the council. She reminded them of her words before the vote. She had said Earth was dangerous, that humans were clever, and that pride could blind them. Now she demanded they listen. But most nobles refused. They could not admit their mistake. Their pride still chained them. While the nobles argued, the humans acted. From orbit they hacked into the kingdom's communication channels. Messages meant for admirals were twisted. Orders were delayed. False commands were sent, making ships turn the wrong way or fire at the wrong time. The humans knew the nobles relied too heavily on their rigid chain of command. By breaking it even a little, they made the whole fleet stumble. At the same time, human voices spread rumors across the stars. They sent whispers that Earth had discovered weapons able to pierce even the mightiest capital ships. Some of these tales were untrue, but the nobles did not know which ones. Fear grew inside the fleet. Officers began to hesitate before charging into battle. Doubt took root. In their palaces, rival nobles began to think less about the war and more about their own survival. Some withdrew ships quietly, claiming they needed them to protect their home worlds. Others sent secret messages to rivals, seeking alliances in case the council turned against them. The unity of the kingdom, once its strength, was now broken by ambition. The humans watched this weakness carefully. They did not rush to crush the kingdom outright. Instead, they let the nobles fight themselves with pride and suspicion. Every time the kingdom tried to gather strength, a rumor or a delay or a small strike from humans made the plan fall apart. On Earth, people worked with new energy. Factories produced weapons faster than ever before. New drones, stronger and smarter, joined the fight. Commanders built strategies not just to defend but to push back. They knew the kingdom was bleeding from within, and they were ready to strike deeper. In the fleet of Lord Rainer, the cracks grew most clear. His officers followed him, but many no longer trusted his words. They saw too many failures, too many reckless charges. When rumors reached them that Earth had already destroyed entire noble fleets elsewhere, fear took hold. Some captains even turned their ships away during battles, leaving their allies exposed. Rainer himself refused to believe the truth. He shouted that the humans were only lucky, that one final strike would crush them. His pride blinded him to the weakness of his own command. Meanwhile, Lady Vanya, though ignored in the council, sent secret words to a few allies. She said the kingdom must retreat before more was lost. But the nobles who still held power would not allow it. They would rather lose ships than lose face. The humans understood something the nobles did not. Power did not come only from weapons but from trust and unity. The kingdom had the larger fleet, but it no longer had unity. The nobles fought for glory, while the humans fought for survival. That difference grew wider with every day. As winter passed on Earth, the people looked up at a sky no longer filled with fear but with hope. They saw the kingdom stumbling and realized victory was possible. Soldiers in orbit fought with renewed strength. Workers in factories doubled their efforts. Farmers like Rahul shared their last harvest without complaint. Humanity smelled the weakness of its enemy, and it gave them courage. In the kingdom's palaces, whispers grew louder. Some spoke of rebellion. Others planned to abandon the war and hide their shame. The invasion that was meant to unite the nobles in triumph now pulled them apart in anger. The humans had not only defended their world. They had found the kingdom's hidden wound. It was not their fleets or their weapons. It was their pride, their greed, and their refusal to stand as one. That wound was now open, and Earth was ready to strike at it. The war was not yet decided, but the balance had shifted. Humanity had shown it could endure, adapt, and outthink. The kingdom had shown its weakness, and soon the galaxy would see how far that weakness could spread. The kingdom had sent its fleets with pride and confidence, expecting Earth to bow within weeks. Instead, they faced months of resistance, cunning strategy, and the unwavering resolve of humanity. By now, the nobles were no longer united. Some whispered of retreat, others blamed rivals, and fear replaced the arrogance that had once burned bright in the Grand Hall. The First Fleet, once the symbol of the kingdom's power, had become a shadow of itself. On Earth, the people did not celebrate victory yet. They knew the war was far from over. But they had achieved something greater than survival. They had proven that humans could fight together, think quickly, and adapt better than an empire that had ruled the stars for centuries. The defenders of Earth had taken the fight to the kingdom, showing that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the largest fleets. Lord Rainer, aboard his flagship, watched his remaining ships burn in orbit. Each explosion tore at his pride. He had thought the humans weak and unprepared. He had believed in the invincibility of his fleet. Now he saw that Earth's people had outmatched him in every way that mattered. Their patience, strategy, and courage had turned the war back onto his empire. Inside the kingdom, noble houses quarreled openly. Some ships had been destroyed, others captured. Officers argued over what to do next. Rumors spread that entire fleets had been lost in ambushes far from the battlefield. Trust, which had once held the kingdom together, was gone. Fear and suspicion ruled. The nobles realized, perhaps too late, that their pride had blinded them to the strength of a united people. Earth's humans acted with precision. Captured ships were repaired and used in the fight. Drones replaced those lost, stronger and faster than before. Factories produced supplies without pause, and command centers coordinated the fleet with clarity and calm. The humans had learned every weakness of the kingdom's strategy and were ready to exploit them. Every mistake of the nobles was met with immediate counteraction. The decisive moment came near the kingdom's own border. Humans lured the remaining fleets into traps carefully prepared over months. Hidden mines and ambush stations waited in asteroid fields. Drones struck in waves, disabling engines and weapons. Capital ships were surrounded and cut off from reinforcements. What was once the strongest fleet in the kingdom became a broken formation, struggling to survive. Lord Rainer tried to rally his officers, but his words carried no weight. Some ships turned to flee, only to be captured or destroyed. Others fought alone, separated from allies, meeting certain defeat. The humans moved like a single organism, adapting, attacking, and pressing their advantage. The nobles' pride had become their weakness. Their inflexibility allowed the humans to control every step of the battle. On Earth, the people watched as the remaining fleets fell. Soldiers in orbit, engineers on the ground, and civilians in factories all played a part in the victory. Humanity had shown not only that it could survive but that it could fight smarter than an empire that had ruled the stars for centuries. Their unity, courage, and intelligence had become their greatest weapons. As the smoke cleared, Lord Rainier and his surviving nobles returned to their grand hall in shame. There were no cheers, only whispers of blame. Rival houses eyed each other with suspicion. Some had lost entire fleets and hundreds of soldiers, and their prestige was gone. The kingdom's pride had led them to a foolish war, and that folly had now destroyed them from within. The humans did not invade the kingdom. They did not seek revenge or conquest. They had only defended their world. Yet by showing strength, intelligence, and unity, they had reshaped the balance of power in the galaxy. The kingdom, once feared, was now fractured and humbled. The lesson of Earth's people was clear: true power came not from arrogance or tradition but from courage, adaptability, and unity. In homes across Earth, people celebrated quietly, not with pride, but with relief and hope. Soldiers returned from orbit, engineers repaired damaged stations, and families gathered together. The planet had survived the greatest threat it had ever faced, and humanity had proven that it was ready to meet any challenge in the future. Lord Rainier and the nobles would remember the invasion as the kingdom's folly. They had underestimated a small world and its people, thinking that short lives and simple fleets could not resist centuries of galactic power. They had been wrong. Humanity had endured, adapted, and overcome. They had turned weakness into strength and fear into determination. The galaxy had changed forever. Earth stood as a symbol of resilience, courage, and the power of unity. The humans had proven that even a seemingly small and fragile species could outthink, outfight, and outlast the mightiest empire. The kingdom's invasion had failed, and in its failure, it had shown the world the brilliance of humanity. For humans, this victory was not the end. It was the beginning of a journey into the stars, a proof that they could survive any challenge, face any enemy, and rise stronger than before. The kingdom had come seeking conquest. Instead, it had awakened a new era where humans would be counted among the great powers of the galaxy. And so, the kingdom's folly became the story of Earth's rise. Humanity had defended their home, proven their strength, and earned their place among the stars. The blue world turned in silence, but its people were ready, united, and stronger than ever before.